The Vorthon Empire surrendered unconditionally after 43 days of warfare that saw their military completely dismantled by overwhelming human force. Admiral Hayes established a temporary military government across former Vorthon territory, while preparations began for the largest war crimes tribunal in galactic history. The aliens who had ordered the genocide of New Eden Colony would face justice. War Commander Zethkol and 17 other high-ranking Vorthon officials were transported to a specially constructed courthouse on a neutral space station. The trials would be conducted according to human legal standards, but representatives from dozens of alien species would serve as witnesses to ensure complete transparency. The galaxy would see that humanity sought justice rather than revenge. Captain Eric Martinez oversaw the establishment of human military bases throughout the former empire. These installations would serve as peacekeeping forces to prevent any resurgence of Vorthon militarism while protecting liberated alien populations. The bases also provided humanitarian aid to species that had suffered under centuries of brutal oppression. Admiral Peter Kim established protocols for identifying and prosecuting war criminals throughout the former empire. His investigators discovered massive archives documenting Vorthon atrocities, including detailed records of the 17 species that had been completely exterminated. The evidence would ensure that those responsible faced appropriate punishment. The trials began 6 months after the surrender, as representatives from 43 different species gathered to witness the proceedings. Dr. Laura Thompson served as the chief prosecutor and presented evidence of systematic genocide spanning 3 centuries. Her testimony included recordings of Vorthon officials celebrating the destruction of entire civilizations. War Commander Zethkol showed no remorse during his trial and actually boasted about the efficiency of his genocidal campaigns. He claimed that the Vorthon Empire had brought order to a chaotic galaxy by eliminating inferior species. His arrogance only strengthened the resolve of the tribunal to deliver maximum punishment. The evidence against the Vorthon leadership was overwhelming. Military records showed that they had systematically targeted civilian populations, including hospitals, schools, and residential areas. They had used biological weapons against some species and had conducted medical experiments on prisoners from others. The scope of their crimes exceeded anything previously documented. President Stone established the Terran Protectorate with Admiral Hayes as the first Protector General. This new organization would maintain peace throughout the region while helping liberated species rebuild their civilizations. The 700,000 ships that had delivered vengeance would now serve as guardians of galactic peace. Civilian Administrator Governor Robert Clark began the massive task of rebuilding devastated worlds throughout the former empire. His teams worked with surviving alien populations to restore their societies while preserving their cultural heritage. Humanity had learned from the Vorthon example that diversity made the galaxy stronger rather than weaker. The liberation of enslaved populations revealed the true extent of Vorthon brutality. Millions of aliens had been forced to work in terrible conditions, producing weapons and supplies for their oppressors. Many species had been reduced to only a few thousand survivors scattered across different worlds. Reuniting families became a priority for the humanitarian effort. Dr. Amy White established medical facilities to treat the physical and psychological trauma suffered by liberated populations. Many aliens had never received proper medical care under Vorthon rule, and their health had deteriorated severely. Her teams worked around the clock to save lives while training local medical personnel. The trials concluded after 18 months with all defendants found guilty of crimes against sentient life. War Commander Zethkol received the ultimate punishment, while his subordinates faced lengthy prison sentences. The verdicts were broadcast throughout known space as a warning to any species considering similar actions. Captain Morrison, who had first received the desperate transmission from New Eden Colony, attended the memorial service for the 50,000 colonists. Their names were carved into a monument built on the ruins of their world, while Earth's finest speakers honored their memory. The colonists had not died in vain because their sacrifice had led to the liberation of countless other beings. Admiral Brooks delivered the keynote address at the memorial ceremony. She spoke about humanity's responsibility to protect the innocent, regardless of their species or origin. The lesson of New Eden was that civilized beings must stand together against those who would commit genocide or other crimes against life itself. The memorial service included representatives from every species that had been liberated from Vorthon oppression. They came to honor the humans whose deaths had triggered the military action that saved their own peoples. Many alien speakers described how the human response had given them hope that justice still existed in the galaxy. The establishment of the Terran Protectorate created a new model for interstellar governance based on cooperation rather than conquest. Human military forces worked alongside alien security units to maintain peace, while civilian governments operated according to their own cultural traditions. Diversity was celebrated rather than eliminated. Captain Julie Foster commanded a patrol squadron that included vessels from 12 different alien species. Her ships monitored former Vorthon territory to ensure that no new threats emerged while providing assistance to worlds still recovering from centuries of oppression. The mixed crews demonstrated that former enemies could become allies when united by common values. The economic reconstruction of liberated worlds required massive resources and careful planning. Engineer Tony Martinez led teams that rebuilt infrastructure, while ensuring that alien cultures were preserved rather than replaced. The goal was to help each species develop according to their own values rather than imposing human standards. Trade agreements between human space and liberated worlds created prosperity that had been impossible under Vorthon rule. Species that had been forced to produce only military equipment could now develop their own economies. Scientific cooperation led to advances that benefited everyone, while cultural exchanges enriched all participating civilizations. The success of the Terran Protectorate inspired other regions of the galaxy to adopt similar cooperative models. The demonstration that genocide could be defeated by united action encouraged species throughout known space to work together against common threats. Humanity had shown that overwhelming force could be used to protect rather than destroy. 5. Years after the liberation, former Vorthon territory had become one of the most prosperous and peaceful regions of the galaxy. The species that had once lived in fear of extermination now worked together on projects that would have been impossible under their former oppressors. Scientific research, cultural development, and economic growth flourished in an atmosphere of mutual respect. The lesson of the Vorthon War spread throughout known space as other species learned that humanity would protect any civilization threatened with genocide. The 700,000 ships that had delivered justice remained ready to respond to similar threats while hoping that their example would deter future aggressors. President Stone's words at the memorial service became the unofficial motto of the Terran Protectorate. "We are all children of the stars, regardless of the world that gave us birth. When one species faces extinction, we all face extinction. When one civilization is threatened, we are all threatened. The galaxy is large enough for every form of life to flourish in peace. The monument on New Eden bore a simple inscription that captured humanity's message to the cosmos. Here died 50,000 innocents whose sacrifice saved billions. Their memory reminds us that the price of peace is eternal vigilance against those who would destroy life itself. They shall not be forgotten. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at 17 different points along the Vorthon border in perfect coordination. 700,000 warships appeared simultaneously across multiple star systems in the largest military deployment in galactic history. The Vorthons had prepared for a small revenge fleet of perhaps 10,000 ships. Instead, they faced an armada that outnumbered their entire military by more than 10 to 1. Admiral Hayes watched from his flagship as the first wave of ships engaged Vorthan border defenses. Captain Michelle Davis led her assault group against the heavily fortified system at Zeta Reticuli, where the aliens had built massive defensive platforms. Her dreadnoughts opened fire with weapons that had been designed specifically to crack enemy fortifications. The Vorthan defenders responded with their standard intimidation tactics, broadcasting threats and demands for surrender. They expected the humans to retreat when faced with their superior firepower. Instead, the human fleet advanced steadily, while their weapons systematically destroyed every defensive installation in the system. Captain Tom Kelly's squadron eliminated the Vorthan. Communication relays in the first minutes of battle. The aliens suddenly found themselves cut off from their command structure and unable to coordinate their defense. Individual Vorthon ships fought bravely, but they had no experience operating without central control. The technological superiority of human ships became apparent immediately. Decades of preparation for interstellar warfare had produced vessels that exceeded Vorthon capabilities in every category. Human weapons penetrated alien shields with ease, while Vorthon attacks barely scratched human defensive systems. Commander Nicole Park monitored enemy communications from her intelligence station and listened to growing panic among Vorthon commanders. They had never faced an enemy that refused to be intimidated, and their tactical doctrine had no answer for the human assault. Desperate calls for reinforcements went unanswered as human forces struck simultaneously across their entire border. The Vorthan High Command on their capital world of Vorth Prime watched in horror as their border defenses collapsed within hours. Their military had conquered dozens of species over the centuries, but they had never fought an opponent with superior numbers and technology. War Commander Zethkol sent urgent messages to allied species requesting immediate military assistance. But the Vorthans had made too many enemies during their expansion. Species that had been conquered or threatened by the Empire refused to help their former oppressors. Some alien governments even sent messages of support to the human fleet while offering intelligence about Vorthon weaknesses. Captain Jennifer Adams commanded the assault on the massive Vorthon shipyards at Proxima Centauri B. These facilities had produced warships for the Empire for over 200 years, and their destruction would cripple enemy military production. Her heavy cruisers targeted the construction bays while fighter squadrons eliminated defensive satellites. The shipyards fell within 6 hours despite desperate resistance from Vorthan naval units. Adams watched as the facilities that had built ships for genocide burned in the void of space. Her crews rescued thousands of alien slaves who had been forced to work in the construction bays under brutal conditions. Colonel Sam Turner led ground forces in liberating planets where the Vorthons had enslaved conquered populations. His Marines discovered concentration camps and forced labor facilities where aliens were worked to death producing resources for the Empire. The evidence of systematic oppression strengthened human resolve to completely destroy the Vorthon military machine. As the human fleet pushed deeper into enemy territory, they uncovered the full extent of Vorthon crimes. Intelligence Officer Commander Ryan Pierce documented evidence of 17 species that had been completely exterminated. Billions of innocent beings had been murdered simply because they refused to surrender their homeworlds. The Vorthans attempted to mount a counterattack using their main battle fleet, but their forces were scattered and demoralized. Human reconnaissance. Ships had tracked their movements for weeks, and Admiral Hayes positioned his forces to intercept them. The resulting battle was completely one-sided as human firepower overwhelmed the alien formation. Captain Nathan Roberts commanded the experimental warship UES Vengeance during the engagement, and his advanced weapon systems proved devastatingly effective. His ship alone destroyed 12 Vorthon cruisers while suffering only minor damage to its shields. The young captain had proven that human technology was a generation ahead of anything the aliens possessed. Desperate Vorthon commanders began targeting human supply lines in hope of forcing a withdrawal. Captain Rachel Brown's logistics fleet came under attack from alien raider squadrons, but their escort vessels easily drove off the attackers. The human supply chain remained intact, while Vorthon resources dwindled rapidly. 3 weeks into the offensive, the Vorthon High Council sent a message offering to negotiate. They proposed returning to pre-war borders and paying reparations for the attack on New Eden Colony. Admiral Hayes forwarded the message to Earth Command with a recommendation that it be rejected immediately. President Stone's response was broadcast throughout Vorthon space, so every alien could hear humanity's terms. The Vorthon Empire committed genocide against 50,000 innocent humans. There will be no negotiations, no compromise, and no mercy for those responsible. Unconditional surrender is the only option that will be considered. General Patricia Webb arrived with reinforcements, including specialized siege equipment designed to crack planetary defenses. Her ships carried weapons capable of destroying entire continents, but they would be used only against military targets. Humanity had not come to commit genocide in return, but to ensure that justice was served. The final assault on Vorth Prime began as human ships surrounded the Vorthon capital world. Captain Mark Taylor led the siege fleet while Commander Susan Clark coordinated precision strikes against military installations. The humans demonstrated that they could destroy the planet entirely, but chose instead to disable its defenses without harming civilian populations. War Commander Zeth Cole made one last desperate attempt to rally his forces for a final battle. He gathered every remaining Vorthon ship around their homeworld and broadcast a call for all loyal citizens to fight to the death rather than surrender. His message was interrupted when human hackers took control of the planetary communication. System Admiral Hayes appeared on every screen throughout Vorth Prime as he delivered humanity's final ultimatum. The Vorthon Empire ends today. Your military forces will surrender immediately or face complete destruction. Those responsible for genocide will stand trial for their crimes. This is your only warning. The siege of Vorth Prime lasted only 18 hours before the remaining Vorthon forces lowered their shields and powered down their weapons. The empire that had terrorized dozens of species for centuries had finally met an opponent that exceeded their capacity for violence. Humanity had brought justice to the galaxy through overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. The Vorthon surrender was broadcast throughout known space as Admiral Hayes accepted the formal capitulation aboard his flagship. Representatives from liberated alien species watched as the empire that had enslaved or destroyed their peoples finally faced the consequences of their actions. The galaxy had learned that genocide would no longer be tolerated by any civilized species. The massive human armada stretched across space for millions of kilometers as 700,000 warships began their journey toward Vorthon territory. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the endless stream of vessels, forming up into attack formations. Dreadnoughts the size of small cities traveled alongside swift destroyers and massive carrier ships loaded with fighter squadrons. The fleet moved through hyperspace in carefully coordinated waves. The journey to Vorthon space would take 4 months, and every detail had to be planned perfectly. Colonel Frank Davis worked with his strategic planning team to coordinate the movement of so many ships without causing dangerous hyperspace interference. Between vessels, Commander Nicole Park supervised the intelligence division as they gathered every piece of information about their enemy. The Vorthons controlled a region of space roughly 50 light-years across, containing dozens of star systems. Their empire included conquered worlds from at least 12 different alien species, most of which had been completely wiped out. Captain Steve Rogers commanded the reconnaissance vessel UES Scout and led advance teams deep into Vorthon territory. His ship used the latest stealth technology to avoid detection while gathering crucial intelligence about enemy defenses. What they discovered was both encouraging and disturbing. The Vorthons had built their empire through overwhelming force against weaker opponents. Their military tactics relied on massive ships and brutal weapons designed to terrorize enemies into surrender. They had never faced an opponent with superior technology or larger numbers. More importantly, they had never fought an enemy motivated by the desire for justice rather than conquest. Supply ship Captain Rachel Brown coordinated the logistics operation that kept the enormous fleet moving. 700,000 ships required millions of tons of supplies, fuel, and ammunition. Her fleet of cargo vessels worked around the clock to maintain the supply lines, while Chief Engineer Paul Anderson managed the complex hyperspace drive systems. The scale of moving so many ships pushed human technology to its absolute limits. Hyperspace lanes that normally carried a few dozen vessels at most now struggled to handle thousands of warships traveling in formation. Navigation computers worked constantly to prevent collisions while maintaining the fleet's schedule. Personal stories emerged during the long journey as crew members dealt with the knowledge that they were heading into the largest battle in human history. Lieutenant Commander Beth Wilson wrote daily letters to her family, knowing she might never return to Earth. Her words carried the hopes and fears of millions of people who had loved ones aboard the fleet. Pilot Officer Alex Johnson was barely 22 years old when he joined the expedition. He flew one of the new fighter craft designed specifically for space combat, and he spent his time training for battles that would determine humanity's future among the stars. His squadron leader, Captain Jennifer Davis, worked to prepare her, young pilots, for what they would face. Veteran Sergeant Major Carlos Rivera had fought in 3 previous conflicts during humanity's expansion into space. He knew the brutal reality of combat, and he spent his time sharing that knowledge with younger soldiers. His stories helped prepare troops for the psychological challenges of fighting an enemy that showed no mercy to prisoners. The journey gave Admiral Hayes time to study everything known about Vorthon military capabilities. His enemy possessed roughly 50,000 warships of various sizes, along with defensive installations protecting their most important worlds. Their weapons technology was impressive, but their tactics were crude and relied mainly on intimidation. Intelligence. Reports revealed that the Vorthons had never lost a major battle during their centuries of expansion. They expected all enemies to surrender when faced with overwhelming force, and they had no experience fighting opponents who refused to give up. This overconfidence would become a critical weakness in the coming conflict. Captain Tom Kelly commanded a squadron of heavy cruisers and spent his time planning assault tactics for various Vorthon strongholds. His ships carried some of the most advanced weapons in the human fleet, including experimental energy cannons that could punch through any known armor. The engineering crews worked constantly to ensure every system functioned perfectly. Dr. Laura Thompson served as the fleet's chief xenobiologist and studied the limited information available about species conquered by the Vorthans. She discovered that at least 17 different alien civilizations had been completely exterminated by the Empire. Dozens more had been enslaved or forced into military service. The doctor's research revealed that the Vorthons followed a pattern in their conquests. They would demand unconditional surrender from any species they encountered. Those who refused were destroyed completely, while those who surrendered became slave labor for the Empire. No conquered species had ever regained their freedom. As the fleet approached the edge of Vorthon space, long-range sensors began detecting enemy defensive positions. The aliens had fortified their border systems with massive space stations and defensive platforms. Intelligence estimates suggested they expected a human force of perhaps 10,000 ships at most. Captain Michelle Davis led the first wave assault. Group and studied the enemy defensive layouts with growing confidence. The Vorthons had positioned their forces to repel attacks by smaller fleets, but their formations would be completely overwhelmed by the approaching human armada. They simply had no experience dealing with an enemy that outnumbered them 14-1. The final weeks of the journey saw increased activity as battle plans were finalized and crew assignments confirmed. Every ship captain received detailed orders for their role in the coming assault. The human fleet would strike simultaneously across multiple star systems to prevent the Vorthons from concentrating their forces. Admiral Hayes gathered his senior officers for a final briefing as they prepared to exit hyperspace at the edge of Vorthon territory. The Admiral looked around the table at the men and women who would lead humanity's largest military operation. In a few hours, we will face an enemy that believes genocide is an acceptable military tactic, Hayes said quietly. They destroyed New Eden Colony because they thought humanity would respond like their previous victims. They thought we would surrender or flee in terror. The Admiral stood and walked to the tactical display showing their planned assault routes. The Vorthons are about to learn that humanity does not abandon its own. We do not negotiate with murderers, and we do not forgive genocide. Today, we teach the galaxy that there are consequences for attacking innocent human families. The fleet prepared for battle as they reached the edge of enemy space. 700,000 human warships powered up their weapons and defensive systems, while their crews made final preparations. The largest military force in galactic history was about to deliver justice to those who had committed genocide against humanity. Admiral Helen Brooks read the transmission from Captain Morrison for the 5th time, and each reading made her angrier. 50,000 innocent humans had been slaughtered by aliens who refused all communication and showed no mercy to civilians. The attack on New Eden Colony was not an act of war between military forces. It was pure genocide. Brooks walked quickly through the corridors of Earth Command headquarters in Geneva. Her aide, Commander Ryan Pierce, followed close behind, carrying data tablets filled with intelligence reports. 3 more colonies had gone silent in the past 6 hours, and long-range sensors detected massive alien fleets moving through human space. The enemy was not satisfied with destroying one world. They intended to wipe out every human settlement beyond Earth's solar system. The Admiral entered the emergency command center where dozens of officers worked frantically to coordinate Earth's response. General Patricia Webb stood before a massive display screen showing the positions of human colonies throughout known space. Red markers indicated worlds that had stopped transmitting, while amber warnings marked colonies that reported alien ships approaching their systems. "What is our current fleet strength?" Brooks asked as she approached the display. General Webb turned to face her with a grim expression. "All active duty vessels are ready for immediate deployment. We have 700,000 warships stationed throughout the solar system, everything from scout frigates to heavy dreadnoughts. Our shipyards have been working at full capacity for the past 50 years building this fleet." Brooks nodded slowly as she studied the tactical display. Humanity had learned hard lessons from their early expansion into space. Pirates, hostile, aliens, and resource conflicts had taught them that peaceful exploration required overwhelming military strength. Every human world was protected by substantial defense fleets, and Earth itself was surrounded by the largest naval force in known galactic history. "Send immediate orders to all fleet commanders," Brooks said. "Full mobilization effective immediately. Every ship, every crew, every support vessel. I want our entire military strength ready to move within 72 hours." Pierce stepped forward with his data tablet. "Admiral, President Stone is requesting your immediate presence at an emergency cabinet meeting. The Terran Defense Council is convening in 1 hour." Brooks left the command center and traveled quickly to the government district. President Marcus Stone had called together the leaders of every nation on Earth, along with the commanding officers of humanity's military forces. The meeting took place in the largest conference room in the United Nations building. President Stone stood at the head of the table as Brooks entered. His face showed the strain of the past few hours, but his voice remained steady and strong. "Ladies and gentlemen, we face the gravest threat in human history. An unknown alien force has attacked and destroyed one of our colonies. Early reports suggest that all 50,000 colonists are dead." The room erupted in angry voices as the world leaders demanded answers. Stone raised his hand for silence before continuing. "Intelligence analysis indicates that these aliens, who call themselves the Vorthan Empire, have been expanding aggressively through nearby star systems. They appear to practice complete genocide against any species they encounter." General Webb activated the room's display screens and showed reconnaissance footage from the New Eden system. The images revealed a planet covered in smoke and fire. Where green farmlands and bustling cities once existed, only burning ruins remained. The alien ships had literally melted the surface of the world with their weapons. The Vorthons used orbital bombardment to destroy every sign of human presence, Webb explained. They targeted not just military installations, but hospitals, schools, and residential areas. Satellite imagery shows they fired on evacuation ships trying to escape the planet. This was systematic extermination. President Stone looked around the room at the assembled leaders. "We know that Dr. Kevin Yang and his agricultural research team were among the victims. Their work could have fed billions of people across human space. We also lost the families of over 200 Earth citizens who had relatives on New Eden." Fleet Admiral Christopher Hayes stood and addressed the assembly. "Mr. President, our intelligence suggests that the Vorthans have never encountered a military force like ours. Their previous conquests involved species with much smaller populations and limited defensive capabilities. They expect us to surrender or flee like the others." Stone nodded grimly. "Admiral Hayes, you will have command of our response fleet." I am authorizing the deployment of our entire military strength. 700,000 warships will carry our message to the Vorthons and to every other species watching this crisis unfold. The president paused and looked directly into the cameras that were broadcasting his words across Earth and to every human settlement in the solar system. The attack on New Eden Colony was an act of genocide. The Vorthon Empire has declared war on all humanity by murdering our innocent colonists. Today, I declare that Earth will respond with the full force of our military might. The assembly rose to their feet as Stone continued his declaration. We will not negotiate with genocidal murderers. We will not accept the destruction of human worlds. The Vorthon Empire will face justice for their crimes, and every other hostile species will learn that humanity protects its own. Admiral Hayes received his orders within the hour. Vice Admiral Maria Gonzalez would handle logistics and supply operations, while Admiral Peter Kim took charge of intelligence gathering. The mobilization began immediately as ships from across the solar system received movement orders. Captain Danny Sullivan commanded the battleship UES Retribution, one of the newest dreadnoughts in the fleet. His crew had trained for years for a conflict like this, but they never expected to face an enemy who practiced genocide. Commander Lisa Thompson led a squadron of stealth frigates designed for deep reconnaissance behind enemy lines. The experimental warship UES Vengeance represented the latest in human military technology. Captain Nathan Roberts, despite his young age, had proven himself as one of Earth's most capable officers. His ship carried weapons that could destroy entire fleets and defensive systems that had never been tested in real combat. Across Earth, families said goodbye to their loved ones as the largest military operation in human history prepared to launch. Engineer Tony Martinez kissed his wife and children before reporting to his assignment aboard a supply vessel. Medical officer Dr. Amy White packed field hospitals designed to treat wounded from the coming battles. The message spread quickly through human space as courier ships carried news of the mobilization. Humanity was going to war, and they were bringing 700,000 reasons why genocide would not be tolerated. The Vorthon Empire had made the fatal mistake of believing that humans would react like their previous victims. President Stone's final words echoed through every human settlement. We are one species, one family, scattered across the stars. When one of us falls, we all fall. When one of us fights, we all fight. The Vorthons will learn that humanity's vengeance is as vast as the space between worlds. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the communication relay station orbiting Titan. The massive moon of Saturn spun slowly below them as countless signals from across human space flowed through their equipment. Jake had been running this station for 3 years now, and he knew the rhythm of space communications like his own heartbeat. Military reports came in steady streams. Cargo ship manifests arrived on schedule, and colony status updates followed their weekly patterns. But something was wrong today. The signal from New Eden Colony was late. The farming world on Kepler 442b always sent their reports at exactly 800 Earth Standard Time every Tuesday. Jake checked his chronometer again. It was already 8:47, and still nothing from the colony that housed 50,000 human souls. Lieutenant Linda Foster approached his station with a worried look on her face. She had been monitoring the deep space channels for the past hour, and her equipment showed no incoming transmissions from the New Eden system. Jake ordered her to try raising the colony directly. Linda worked her controls and sent out a standard communication request across the vast distance between them. Minutes passed with no response. Jake felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. Communication delays were normal across interstellar distances, but complete silence from an entire world was something else entirely. He decided to wait another hour before taking any action. Sometimes, solar flares or asteroid impacts could damage communication arrays and cause temporary blackouts. At 1,000 hours, Jake received a priority message from Earth Command. Admiral Helen Brooks herself was requesting an immediate status report on all outer colonies. Her message carried the highest security classification, and Jake realized that New Eden was not the only colony that had gone silent. 3 other worlds had also stopped transmitting in the past 24 hours. Jake ordered his entire crew to focus all their equipment on the New Eden system. If there was any signal coming from that direction, no matter how weak, they would find it. Chief Technician Ryan Cooper worked frantically to boost their receiver sensitivity while Communications Specialist Amy Martinez scanned every frequency, band known to human technology. Then, at 11:27 hours, something came through. It was not the normal colony status report. Instead, a broken and desperate voice crackled through the static. Jake recognized it immediately as belonging to Dr. Linda Carter, the colony's chief medical officer. Her words came in fragments as the signal faded in and out. "This is New Eden Colony calling any human vessel or station. We are under attack by unknown alien forces. Repeat, we are under attack. Massive ships have entered our system and are bombarding our settlements from orbit. They gave no warning and they are not responding to our communications. Our defense satellites were destroyed in the first wave, and our ground-based weapons cannot reach their ships." The transmission cut out for several seconds before Linda Carter's voice returned, now filled with terror. "They are landing troops in the agricultural zones. Our security forces are trying to resist, but their weapons are too advanced. We have confirmed reports of civilian casualties in the thousands. The alien soldiers are not taking prisoners. They are killing everyone they find, including children and elderly." Jake gripped his command chair so hard his knuckles turned white. He had visited New Eden Colony twice during his career, and he knew many of the families living there. "Dr. Carter," continued her desperate message as explosions could be heard in the background. "The enemy ships are enormous, larger than anything in our fleet. They appear to be using some kind of plasma weapons that can melt through our bunkers and shelters. We estimate at least 50 alien vessels in orbit around our planet. Our governor tried to surrender, but they ignored all attempts at communication. This is not a military occupation. This is genocide." The signal became weaker and more broken. Jake could hear the sound of weapons fire getting closer to Dr. Carter's location. Her voice became strained as she continued broadcasting. "To anyone receiving this message, warn Earth Command that humanity has new enemies. These aliens show no mercy and they seem determined to wipe out our entire colony. We do not know who they are or why they attacked us. Our science teams managed to scan their ships before the satellites were destroyed. The alien vessels use unknown energy signatures, and their hull materials are not in our databases." Another long pause filled with static made Jake wonder if they had lost the signal completely. Then Dr. Carter's voice returned one final time, now barely a whisper. "This will likely be our last transmission. The aliens have reached the capital city and resistance is collapsing. Tell our families on Earth that we fought bravely to the end. Tell them that New Eden Colony died with honor. This is Dr. Linda Carter signing off for the final time." The transmission ended abruptly with the sound of massive explosions. Jake and his crew sat in stunned silence as they realized they had just witnessed the death of an entire human world. 50,000 men, women, and children had been murdered by unknown aliens who offered no quarter and accepted no surrender. Jake immediately sent an emergency flash message to Admiral Brooks at Earth Command. He included the complete recording of Dr. Carter's final transmission, along with all the technical data his crew had gathered. The message would take several hours to reach Earth, but Jake marked it with the highest priority codes available. While they waited for orders from Earth Command, Jake's crew worked to analyze every detail of the transmission. Chief Cooper managed to extract some background data that revealed the approximate size and energy output of the alien ships. The numbers were staggering. Each enemy vessel was at least 5 times larger than humanity's biggest dreadnought, and their weapons output exceeded anything in the human fleet. Communications specialist Martinez discovered that the aliens had jammed all outgoing transmissions from New Eden except for the medical emergency frequency that Dr. Carter had used. This suggested that the attackers wanted to prevent any warning from reaching other human worlds. The systematic nature of the attack indicated careful planning and intelligence gathering. Jake realized that humanity was now at war with an enemy they knew nothing about. An enemy that had just demonstrated their willingness to commit genocide against peaceful human colonists. As he stared out at the stars, Jake wondered how many other human worlds were already under attack and how long it would take for Earth to respond to this unprovoked act of war against all humanity.